Booktube, Sarah here, and welcome to my channel. Today I'm coming to you with my weekly reads for April the 14th of 2018. So I finished another 4 books this week, yay! But again, like I said last week, I am going to try and keep this video a little bit shorter. Yeah, I did not totally mean to go on that whole spinning yarn tangent last week for those of you who watched the video. That's why I try and put timestamps in the videos now, in case you guys, want to only watch watch my thoughts on certain books, because I wouldn't necessarily call them reviews. I mean, they're not any kind of critical reviews or anything at all like that, but, it's more my thoughts and what I personally thought about the book, essentially, my feelings. I'm not a critical book reviewer, but that's okay. We're all different. Onto the books. Alright, so the first book that I finished this week was Hungry Heart by Jennifer Weiner. This is a non-fiction memoir type book. It was narrated on audio by the author, and it was published in 2016 by Atria Books. It has an average rating of 3.77 stars on Goodreads, and I gave this book 5 stars. I got 1 challenge for this one, but I read this one specifically for this challenge. And that was for the Fairy Tale Bingo for week 5. The prompt was Tom Thumb, and Tom Thumb, both words in that title start with a T. So the prompt was to read a book where all the words in the title start with the same letter. And I did a search on the Toronto Public Library website, like for Overdrive, and I found this book. And I'm familiar with the author, although I haven't read her work. And, so I thought I'll give it a try. Now, it is a long book, you guys. It is close to, on audio, about 12 to 13 hours on audio, but highly worth it. Again, I have not read any of her stuff personally, but now I want to read everything that she has written. It was a fantastic book. She is a great storyteller. And like I said, this is a memoir. It's nonfiction, so these are not tales. She's not telling stories. These are stories, but they are true stories about her childhood, about growing up, writing her first book. And, one of her books, and I didn't realize this, was actually made into a movie. And when I was talking to my mom about it last weekend, my mom she remembers that movie. She actually really enjoys it. It's called In Her Shoes, and it's with Cameron Diaz and Shirley MacLaine, I think, is in the movie. But yeah, she talks about that experience, about becoming a mother, about getting married. She grew up, she's Jewish, and she grew up on the pudgier side, and she still is. I now follow her on Twitter and Instagram, and, nothing wrong with that. She's an average woman, and she talks a lot about, in her childhood, about getting teased and picked on, about, different things. And I think what I really enjoyed about this book was that there are a lot of things in there that, no matter where you are or how you grew up or what your own personal story is, there are things in this book that you can relate to. I wasn't able to relate or empathize with the whole, when she got pregnant and when she had her kids and stuff like that, because I'm not a mom. So that didn't resonate with me. But the parts about her talking about growing up and being bullied and picked on because she was different, I can absolutely empathize with that, because I went through that myself. Maybe not to the extent that she did, but I still know what it was like to feel like an outcast of sorts. Do you know what I mean? So like I said, there's stuff in this book that, everybody can resonate with. She's a great storyteller. Regardless if you are a fan of her work or not, I recommend it. It was a lot of fun. There was a lot of great laugh out loud moments. Her grandmother, who lived to be like 100 and something, she was actually still alive when the book was published, I think. I think her grandmother just passed last year. And Jennifer Weiner she's in her mid-40s, I think. And, she talks about how in the movie she was able to get her grandmother in as like an extra. In this movie, her grandmother was in her 80s or 90s, and she got to be an extra in the movie and meet Shirley MacLaine. Like, how wonderful. And how during the whole movie process, or after the movie was done, she got to, she was on a panel with a couple other authors that had their books turned into movies. And one of them was Alice Hoffman for, of course, Practical Magic, which I read earlier this year, and it's one of my favorite movies, and how Alice Hoffman pretty much hated the movie. And she talks about how, once you sell the rights to a movie studio, you lose all input on that movie generally, most of the time. Depends on who you are. I mean, if you're a Michael Crichton or something like that, that's a little different. But, for a first-time author who's bringing a first-time, their book is going to a movie, you really don't have much of a say. But, and then her childhood growing up and what it was like for her, and, how she spent a summer in Israel and what that was like. It was really, really good, highly enjoyable, and I absolutely recommend it. The next book that I finished this week was The Chocolate Comeback by Roxanne Snopek. This is, of course, a contemporary romance novel. It was published, it is book number 7. I think it's 7. I wrote down 6, but I'm pretty sure it's book 7 in the Love at the Chocolate Shop series. It was published in 2017 by Tool Publishing, and it has an average rating of 4.64 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it 3.5 stars. I got 3 challenges completed out of this one. For the Triple RC for April, challenge number 5, April 1st, which was April Fool's Day, and I think it was read a book that was published in April, which this one was. For the Stacking the Series challenge, this was my 15th out of 55 books. And for the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs quarterly challenge, it was read a book with a pure-hearted character. And Mark is the pure-hearted character in this story. So this story is about Dee Dee. She is the sister to Maddie, the twin sister to Maddie. And Maddie, her book I think was book 5, which was The Chocolate Cure. And it was probably my favorite in the series so far. So I had high hopes for this book. Just because I am really a fan of this author now. Which is great when you read a series like this and it's written by many different authors, because you kind of get to know new authors. Do you know what I mean? And so anyway, this is Dee Dee's story. And she left the small town of Marietta when she was graduated high school and went to New York to become a high fashion model. She is now back in town, and her family's like, well, what have you been doing? We haven't seen you in any advertisements or on TV, or, what's going on in New York? And she's too embarrassed to admit the fact that nothing has happened. Her career has gone absolutely nowhere. And so she's back in town kind of, with her tail between her legs kind of idea, trying to figure out what her next step is. And she's helping out her half-sister Sandhya, because Cynthia's pregnant and is due any day, and she's got this like charity thing to run, and so Dee Dee's stepping in to help her out because Sandhya can't be on her feet. So anyway, of course she needs a job because she's currently out of work, and but her family doesn't know that. They think she's just on like a vacation. And but she figures she needs something to do. Her twin has figured it out, and she confides in Maddie, so of course Maddie knows the situation. So she's trying to help her find a job. Well, she meets Isaac. And Isaac just moved to town, and he's got a younger brother. Now, when I say younger brother, the younger brother's only a few years younger, so he's a full-grown man. But he has Down syndrome, and his name is Mark. And I love him. He made this story for me. The author wrote him so well, making him such a fantastic character, and he had such a great personality. And you absolutely empathized with him, and you empathized with Isaac in dealing with this. Their parents had passed away, I believe, and he had moved back to look after his brother. And the two of them live in this house together, but Isaac, of course, has to work. And, Mark kind of needs constant supervision. You hate to say it, even as an adult, it's like babysitting in a way. And, and he needs something to do, essentially. Like, it's not babysitting per se. It's the fact that, you want to feel like he's contributing, like he's doing something. So he has him set up in this like adult care center during the day, and he drops them off, and, they kind of put them to work. Well, then his eyes are kind of opened at what kind of a facility this actually is. And, he's not exactly happy with it. And then Dee Dee shows up on his front step, and, she offers to kind of be Mark's, helper, essentially, and look after him during the day and take him places and do things with him and keep him entertained, while Isaac can work. And, the story kind of goes from there. I wanted to give this one 4 stars. I really, really wanted to like it more, but unfortunately, Dee Dee's first impressions of Mark kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, to be fair. She didn't have the greatest kind of first meeting with him, and what really set it down for me is that she voiced it out loud to Mark. And, he's such a warm-hearted and sweet character. It'd be like kicking a puppy. Do you know what I mean? It was so, she redeems herself later, and her and Mark end up becoming the very best of friends, but, it was that initial meeting. Now, you know, she could have thought it in her head and not said it out loud. I'm not justifying that that makes it better, but to actually voice it out loud to him was uncalled for, essentially. But that was really the only black mark I had in this book. I really like that this series is going in this direction with including a lot of characters who are who have disabilities, and you know, they're not being focused on as main characters, but they're still large players in the story. In one of the earlier books, I believe it was even the first book, you meet a girl by the name of Sarah Maria, who is the sister of one of the main characters, and she is on the autism spectrum. And, you know, now you have Mark with Down syndrome, and there's another character that's introduced in this story who is also on the autism spectrum, but she's a younger girl. And, you know, the whole premise is that this fashion show is going to raise money to build a better adult care facility for these people in town, so they have something, you know, to do, to feel like they're part of society and to feel like they're helping, and, you know, and stuff like that, which they should be. And I think that's absolutely awesome, you know. It's only a disability as long as you make it a disability, that kind of thing, right? But yeah, I really, really enjoyed it. I'm loving this series, and I'm looking forward to the next one. The next book that I finished was Accidentally Unpurposed by Jill Shalvis. This is, of course, a contemporary romance novel. It is book number 3 in the Heartbreaker Bay series. This was narrated on audio by Karen White, and it was published in 2017 by Avon. It has an average rating of 4.06 stars on Goodreads, and I gave it 3.5 stars, but much higher on the 3.5 star scale. Just shy of 4 stars. It didn't quite hit 4 stars for me. So I got 2 challenges completed of this one. The monthly challenge for April, A is for April, which is essentially read a book that starts with the letter A. And then for the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs quarterly challenge, I got Diamond, which is read a book with a white cover or a wedding or engagement in the story. And of course, no spoilers here, but it's a romance novel, you know. I really enjoyed this one. I do love this series, this Heartbreaker Bay series. This is Elle and Archer's story, and they have quite the backstory. They knew each other 12 years earlier when he was a cop and she was just a 16-year-old girl. There's not a huge age difference between them. So she would have been 16 to his 22 when they first met. So what's that, like 6 years? But now, of course, they're older. She's almost 30, so he would be like 36 or something, 35, 36. And they work in the same building, and they met over a year ago. So these two have kind of been butting heads since the first book, which is always fun, which is what I really like about series, that you're introduced to these characters, and it's like, okay, when are you going to get Elle's story? When are you going to get, because you knew from their, like, when you first meet them in the first book, that you're like, yeah, something's happening between the two of them. So they have this history. She has a pretty shady history with her mother and her sister. You know, they kind of did what they had to do to survive kind of idea, you know, stealing and things like that. And her sister really never got out of that life, but Elle did, and made better for herself. And now she works, she manages a property, essentially a building. The building that some of the characters live in, and that the pub that's featured in the first book is in, and stuff like that. And Willa's pet shop from book 2. So, you know, this is how they're all interconnected, right? And of course they are a big group of friends. And the two of them, like, can't stand each other. Like, it's really, really an enemies to lovers romance. And I really enjoyed it. Again, it didn't quite hit the mark for me at a 4 star, but still highly enjoyable. A lot of sexy times in this book. And I loved seeing all the other characters and how they interact together. And, you know, the female friendships is such a big thing for me. And I just love, love, love that in contemporary romance. You know, and even the friendship of the guys. Like, there's this great line in the book, and Spence is talking to Elle about when he was talking to something about Archer, and it was about feelings, and Spence is like, you know, I don't talk about feelings, and she's like, well, what did he say next? And Spence is like, well, then we decided what we were going to wear for our prom dresses. Like, you know, that really kind of witty banter is fantastic in these books, and I absolutely love this series, and I am so looking forward to continuing on with it. And the last book that I finished this week was Head in the Clouds by Karen Witemeyer, I believe is how you say her name. This is a Christian fiction historical romance novel, and it was narrated on audio by Nicole Poole. It was published in 2010 by Bethany House Publishers, and it has an average rating of 4.16 stars on Goodreads. I also gave this book 3.5 stars, but within my ratings of, even though I might give 2 books 3.5 stars, as you guys probably know, and it's the same thing, they can fall in different spots on that ladder. And this one was much closer to the bottom. This one was a 3-star, but I'll explain in a minute. I did bump it up a half a star because of, reasons. So I got 3 challenges completed out of this one. This was for the Mad Hatter's Tea Party, spin number 8. It says, as the saying goes, Mad is a March hare, and he is often portrayed as forgetful, confused, or distracted. Read a book about someone who is often absent-minded. And Adelaide, or Addie, in this story, is not so absent-minded, but as the title suggests, her head is in the clouds. This was also for Pass the Parcel for week number 5, which was to read a book that was on the romance hero or heroine hired as a butler, housekeeper, cook, chauffeur, maid, and more. So you had to pick from certain lists and read a book from those lists. And when I was going through them, I saw this book and I got so excited because this book has been on my radar for quite some time. And I'll explain in a few minutes, but when I saw it and I looked, and Audible has it on the romance package to listen to, so I immediately snagged it to read. And the last one was for the Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs challenge as well, which was happy, which is read a book with a cheerful character. Addie is beyond cheerful. So, the premise of this story, it's about Addie, and this takes place in the 1800s in Texas, and she is a school teacher in a very small town. And there's a man who comes to town every week and on the train, and he sells books. And she is like his best customer. She loves to read. She loves, she's a school teacher, so she of course needs books for the school. So anyway, she thinks that he is in love with her and, that they are going to get married. Well, then at the very beginning of the book, he pretty much tells her, I've accepted a new position and I won't be coming to town anymore. So he's gone for, a few weeks or whatever, and she decides to quit her position and go to Fort Worth, Texas and find him. Well, of course, she finds him only to find out he's actually married. Now, this, again, Christian romance, so nothing, there's no hanky-panky going on. It was just strictly, he would take her to dinner, he would kind of, almost like a wine and dine kind of idea, like tell her things and stuff like that, and, she figures out later on he probably had a girl at every stop that he would do this with, just so he wouldn't get lonely kind of idea. Again, Christian romance, no hanky-panky. So then she doesn't know what she's going to do with herself. She quit her teaching position, and if they found out that she had quit her teaching position to essentially run after a man, they weren't going to hire her back. So she finds an ad in this paper and to apply for a governess position. And it's at a ranch, 2 days travel from Fort Worth. And she is one of the 3 who's picked to go, and she shows up, and of course she's the one who's hired. This is for, his name is Gideon, and he is actually an English nobleman, and he has moved to America to make a life for himself, and he's a sheep farmer, or like wool, and but he's got a daughter, which I don't want to give too much away, but he's got a daughter, and she needs a governess, essentially. So that's where the story kind of goes from there. There's an evil uncle who wants to take the daughter away, and stuff like that. So there is that that element of mystery and suspense interwoven into the story. Now, low on the 3.5-star rating. I had such high hopes for this book. So I saw this book in a cover contest years ago, and I think it won for best cover for a historical, and it was an online contest. They're not up, I couldn't find them anywhere online now, but it was for a website called Cover Cafe, and they tend to do these contests every year, or they used to up until I think 2015 or something. So it's been a number of years since they've had anything new, which is sad because they're a lot of fun. But anyway, when I first saw this cover, I'm like, it just drew me in. How many of us have not been there as readers? Your nose is buried in a book, and you're gonna, you're almost gonna fall off for, you're walking, or people who look down at their phones now, And, when I read what the book was about, I thought, it sounds like a lot of fun. Again, it's a Christian romance. This was heavily religious. Now, I should have known that by looking at the fact that it's Bethany House Publishing. They are, that's all they publish, are Christian romances or Christian books. Now, I have no problem reading Christian romance. You guys know that. I enjoy it. I can appreciate and enjoy it. The problem is with this book. Now, everybody's different. This is my personal thoughts on it. You might be of the type and go, oh wow, I would really like to read that because that's really how I feel in my faith. And that's fine. But it wasn't how I feel. And I found the characters relied far too much on God. It wasn't like The only example that I can think of is that, you know, like something's happening with the little girl in the story, and they're like, well, it's out of our hands, it's in God's hands. Okay, that's fine. Pray and hope that the little girl's returned safe, but get your butt out there and find her. You know, you kind of need both. You can't just rely on your faith. You need to act on it too, and help. Do you know what I mean? The other thing is Adeline herself. Oh my gosh, she drove me crazy. She was perfect. She was Mary Poppins. You know, like I think I said in my review on Goodreads that like I expected like little woodland birds and squirrels to be following her around like a Disney princess. She was the best teacher. She was the best on a horse. She was the best at shooting a gun. She made the best biscuits. She, you know, looked perfect all the time. Do you know what I mean? Like, I like my character to have some flaws. They tried to weave that in, that she was a little absent-minded, that she kind of was very fanciful. That's not really a flaw, in my opinion, you know? Like, you know, she could have been great at all these things, but you know what? Every time she tried to make biscuits, they burned. Something would have been better than nothing. And my other issue was the villain in the story, and for lack of a better word, the uncle. No joke, the very first time you meet him, he's literally twisting his mustache, trying to think up his devious plan. Like, it was just so... I don't know. Again, it was, yeah. I did, saying all that, though, I did enjoy reading this. It kept me entertained. You know, the whole aspect with the daughter and the uncle, and, you know, the reasons why he's trying to get her and things like that was very sweet. It was a very quick romance between Gideon and Adelaide. That was almost second story. Like, there was like almost two stories interwoven together, which was, it was really well written, and I enjoyed that aspect of it. The reason it got 3.5 stars instead of just 3 stars was because of the cover. That's the first thing that drew me into the story, you know, probably 8 years ago now, because it probably won in 2010. And that cover has stayed in my mind for that long. So I think that absolutely deserved a 0.5 star rating up. And it will probably make my list of best covers of the year, of books that I've read this year. So, yeah. But anyway, I liked it. It might be your taste. It wasn't personally mine. And again, it is part of the Audible romance package. If you're interested to check it out, please do. You know, I didn't dislike it, but I didn't love it, unfortunately. So what am I currently reading? My current audiobook is When Dimple Met Rishi by, I apologize, I'm probably going to say this name wrong, Sandhya Menon. And this is being narrated on audio by Sandhya, Mathana, and Vikas Adam. This is a YA contemporary romance. It is absolutely adorable. So I'm reading this one for another challenge. I can't remember what challenge for at this point, but you guys will find out next week when I talk about, you know, my thoughts on the book. But this one I saw come up, a couple months ago maybe. Somebody on BookTube was talking about it, and the cover kind of drew me in. Again, it was a cover thing. And I thought that looks really cute. And then about a week or so ago, it came up on Audible as the daily deal for like $5 or $4.95 or whatever it is for the daily deal. And I was kind of bummed because I wanted to read it, and I thought, but I didn't have the money at the time to pick it up. So, you know, literally payday was the next day. But anyway, when I was doing a search on this, and I found it. Oh, the challenge is to read a book with somebody's name in the title. And I was looking on Audible on the romance package to see if I could come across something, and this book came up, so it's part of the romance package. So if you want to read it and you have that, go ahead and you can listen to it on audio. So this is a story about a girl by the name of Dimple, and I just absolutely love her name. And she's an Indian girl, born in America, but to Indian parents. And she has just been accepted to Stanford in the fall. She is a high school graduate, and this is kind of the summer between high school and college. And there's a program for web developers that's going on at Stanford that she wants to go to. Well, her parents are very traditional, and they don't want her to do certain things, and her mother pretty much figures that her going to college is a place where she's going to find a good Indian husband. And she wants to learn. She wants to advance her career. She's a very modern girl. And this takes place in modern day, so it's not like a historical or anything. While she's there, you get Rishi's story, and he is also from a very traditional family. Her parents and his parents were friends, but they have never met. And they have actually been, they are an arranged marriage. And he has known this for a long, long time. She has not. And she was duped by her parents to go to this program because he was going to be there and they were hoping that that's how they were going to meet. And the story goes from there, and it's their story of the two of them during this like summer, you know, study class program at Stanford, and it is a lot of fun. It is narrated in dual perspective, which seems to be pretty commonplace, I find, in YA and new adult. But what I like about this is it's not like chapter 1 is by her, chapter 2 is by him, chapter 3 is by her, and so on and so forth. Within the chapter, you get alternating perspectives. And it's not told in first person, so it's not, you know, she's not telling the story or he's not telling the story, but it's from their perspectives. Does that make sense? And, you know, I really, really like it. And to the point where I think in one chapter, something about he shows up at her door and, you know, it's from her perspective. And she's thinking to herself, oh, you know, I'm so glad he didn't bring flowers because I didn't want this to feel like a date. And then it quickly flips to his perspective. And he's like, oh, I'm so glad I didn't bring flowers. It would have totally weirded her out. And then it flips right back to her perspective. So even just a few lines, it goes back and forth. And it's really well done, and I'm really enjoying it, and I'm super glad I finally got to pick it up. My current ebook is Carolina Girl by Virginia Kantra. This is book number 2 in the Dare Island series. I am about 50% on the way through this. I plan on finishing it today. That's my goal for this afternoon. Ice storm outside. I'm going to sit in, cuddled up, and read this book, because I need it done by today. I didn't get a lot of reading done this week, unfortunately. So yeah, so that is what I'm reading now, and it's a small town contemporary romance. Takes place on a little island off the coast of North Carolina, and it's about a family. So this is about the sister, and she wanted to get out of this small town, off of this small island. She went to Harvard University, got a business degree, moved to Manhattan, made a name for herself. Very beginning of the book, she gets fired from her job. And, you know, she kind of comes home because her mom was just in an accident. And this all took place in book number 1. And, you know, and now she's run into the guy she kind of had a crush in high school. So it's a second chance romance. I am really enjoying it. The part of the story that I'm at now takes place at Halloween, and it's a lot of fun. And yeah, I am thoroughly enjoying this series. It's one that has, I think, it's not a more well-known contemporary romance series, but if you like it, if you like small town romance, definitely check these books out. They are a lot of fun. And last but not least, the physical book I am still reading is The One Who Changed Everything by Lilian and Darcy. This is the first book in the Cherry Sisters series, trilogy, I believe it is. And I'm enjoying this. I am about, how far am I? About 90 pages in. Now, I've been reading this for about 2 weeks, and I've had major issues trying to read. I used to read before bed. I used to have no problem going to bed and laying in bed and reading a book. Over the last few months, when I go to bed now, maybe it's just work, maybe it's just extra tired, I don't know, but I can feel wide awake and go to bed, and the second I lay down in bed and start reading, I immediately want to go to sleep. So I think my brain is now associating bedroom with sleeping, which is a good thing, you know, like I don't have insomnia or anything like that. I'm having no problem actually sleeping. I'm actually having a problem staying awake for 20 minutes to read a couple chapters in a book. So what I've started doing now over the last few days, and it seems to be working actually quite well, is that about a half an hour before I normally go to bed. I normally go to bed about 11 o'clock at night. The nights I have to drop my husband off at work, I drop him off, and I'm usually home just after 10. I make myself a cup of tea. I have my before bed tea, which is super yummy. It is a caramel bedtime tea, and it's from Yogi Teas. So good. I highly recommend it. So I make a cup of tea, and I sit down out here on the couch, and I turn off the laptop. I, you know, put the cell phone down. Like, I don't look at the cell phone. I don't look at, you know, I don't even pick up my e-reader. I pick up this, and I sit, and I'm getting reading done, and it's fantastic. So I give myself about a half an hour every night before bed, and I have my sleepy time tea, and I read my book, and then I go to bed, and I sleep. And it's working out so well. So I'm really happy. I actually plan to have this done by tomorrow, I'm hoping, because I have a bunch more books that I want to read, of course. I have all my physical books on my shelf that I've been buying that I want to read. So I am enjoying this one. I'm enjoying it, but I have a few issues with it. It's not a second chance romance per se. He was engaged to her sister, and that was 10 years ago. And now he's doing some landscape work on the family's, they own like a resort in the Adirondack Mountains, and he's kind of had a thing for this sister, and yeah, I'll talk about it more next week when I finish it. But yeah, I'm enjoying it. I mean, the writing's great, and yeah, So that's that. So anyway, guys, that is it for the books. I will very, very quickly, because this video went on far longer than I anticipated it to. I do apologize. I'm just going to stop saying I'm making short videos, and we're just going to go with it, guys, so I don't feel any pressure. So what am I knitting on this weekend? I'm working on my sweater, my campsite cardi sweater, the one I had to completely rip back and start again. I just, yesterday, put the sleeves on hold. So we now have sleeves. There's where the sleeves are going to go, those holes. So I have started, so there's the back, and it fits. I did put it on, and it actually fits. So bonus. So yeah, so I'll be giving this a little bit of love this weekend. There's my little marker where I was the last time I showed you guys. So not a lot of work done. Now that the sleeves are on hold, it's going to knit a lot faster because I had 100 extra stitches on the needles with before I took the sleeves, put them on hold. So yeah, excuse me, love this one, and I'm looking forward to it, to getting some knitting done. Excuse me, and some reading done. I seem to have the hiccups. Anyway, guys, that is it for me. I do hope that you enjoyed this video. Please let me know in the comments below if you've read any of these books and what you thought about them, or what is your favorite book that you read this week. And until my next video, guys, take care and happy reading. Bye.